Welcome to the Tortoise and Hare Financial Podcast, where we help you navigate your financial journey at your own pace. Today, we have a very special guest joining us, Jim Lau, the President of TvH Financial. Jim will be sharing his thoughts on turning 50 and how it has affected his perspective on aging and recovery after his open heart surgery 4 years ago. As we discuss these topics, we hope that our listeners can gain some valuable insights into their own lives and financial planning. So, let's dive into this episode and hear what Jim has to say about life at 50.
Powered by Riverside.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome, listeners, to our podcast. This is the Tortoise and the Hare Financial Podcast. Today, we're going to do a little different. My name is Ryan. I'll be your host today. Jim's going to be in the background and answering questions for once. This was an important episode for us to do today because we really wanted to introduce Jim in a different way, and also for myself to get to know Jim in a different way. Jim celebrated something pretty big last week. He turned 50, and obviously lots has happened with you, Jim, over the years, especially over the last 4 years. Obviously, you've shared with me, and I'm sure some guests have also heard that you actually had open heart surgery 4 years ago. So you are obviously lots has happened between having that and also being a family man, you know, a wife and 2 wonderful kids at home. And you're obviously the president of TvH Financial. So Jim, tell us about how it's been going into year 50 for you.
Interesting, quite honestly. I mean, in some ways I feel 50.
Yeah.
In other ways, I just don't. I feel a lot younger, and in certain ways, I feel a lot older, more physically because of some of the, again, recent surgeries that I had to deal with. But no, it's been great. I had celebrated with family. The actual day of my birthday, I decided to take the day off. I think that's something that you do as well, right?
Yeah, International Day.
Yeah, there you go. And drove my sports car for the day, which had been parked for the winter. Yeah. And then Carol and Liam and Serena took me out for dinner to a wonderful restaurant in Whitby, which I highly recommend, called Butchie's. So we did that, and then I didn't want to party. I really didn't want to party. Not for any particular reason, like it's just a feeling that I had. Yeah. But my siblings and my mom would not accept that, so we ended up having a party at our house, and it was great. You know, it was great being surrounded by family. I loved it.
Did you have a birthday cake also?
Well, Carol was gonna order a birthday cake, and I said no, don't do that, because she also told me that she had placed an order for 3 dozen donuts, which is my favorite dessert for people who don't know. Okay. So if you ever are meeting with me and you want to bring something, you can never go wrong with the donut. And we drove again to a town called Campbellford, which is about an hour and 15 minutes northeast of where I live, to this one bakery. Okay. And I just said to her, you know what, just stack the donuts, and that'll be my birthday cake, and that's exactly what we did.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. It's always nice to just share with me, especially a big one like 50. I know we try not to make a big deal of our birthdays as we go, but obviously the people around us, and you had kind of said last week too, you sometimes didn't even see yourself making it to 50, especially after what happened 4 years ago, right? So, having open heart surgery obviously is a big change for yourself. So, part of this episode is just reflecting on what it means to reach such a big milestone of 50. So, anything that you've reflected on over the last week or two, or leading up to your birthday, that you felt was big?
One of the reasons why I wanted to do this episode was to kind of talk about reaching that milestone. Because I just find, especially men, for whatever reason, we don't like to share our feelings or what we're thinking, and we kind of, hold it within us, and we internalize it. And I've always been a believer of, let's just talk. Let's just, express how you're feeling, get it out there, a bit of a release valve, so to speak. So I just wanted to kind of share, the impact that it's had on me, kind of my thoughts, specifically also with the recovery that I had. It's amazing how over the last couple of years, I've come across more people who've required open heart surgery or some kind of cardiovascular surgery or something major like, cancer and surgeries. And you have these different thoughts. So when I was in my 20s and I looked to 50, I definitely looked at 50 being, wow, that's like really, really old.
Yeah.
And it's when I was in my 20s, I didn't think that I would never reach the age of 50. I always felt that I would, age, to a normal age, whatever that would be.
Yeah.
And even in my 40s, I would look to 50 before having the surgery. And, kind of like a lot of people I find as they're getting older, they dread the next birthday.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm going to be 50. And, that's, kind of like midlife, or people get their midlife crisis where I think that's probably a little bit sooner because I don't think I'm going to hit 100.
Yeah.
And I was the same person. I would think to 50 in my early 40s, thinking, oh my goodness, I can't believe another one. But when you deal with a life-changing medical event like I did, and at age 46, found out that had they not uncovered the issue that I had, that by the end of the year I would have been dead.
Yeah.
That I would no longer be here. So now, I'd say in the last 3 or 4 years, approaching 50, it's like, yeah, man, I celebrate it. Like, I don't celebrate it party-wise. I don't complain about it. I don't complain about the aches and pains that you get a little bit more each year as you get a little bit older. I look forward to it. I really do.
Yeah.
I'm honored with every year that I get. And I remember hearing someone a few years ago say, you know what, they don't complain about getting older because there's so many people that wish they had made it to that age and they didn't, whatever that age might be.
Yeah.
And then finally, whenever we talk about it or I'm speaking with someone about aging, I say to them, you know what, I'd rather age than be dead.
Yeah.
I'd rather have the aches and pains than not because it means I'm no longer around. So definitely a bit of a mindset shift for me.
Yeah. Yeah. You made up a great point, which is like it affects aging and health affects a lot of people very differently. Mm-hmm. And being able to talk about it both as a male and just in general, that we're talking more and more about mental health awareness, health in general. Have you noticed anything that you've done that you've changed in your own lifestyle over the last few years, before or after heart surgery?
Lifestyle, I mean,
besides donuts.
Yeah, and that's
enjoy life, right?
Well, you still have to enjoy some of it. Just don't enjoy them every single day, right?
Yeah.
Couple of things. If I go from a mental point of view, from a mental health perspective, I definitely fear dying now, and I didn't prior to having the surgery. Mm-hmm. And not that I'm afraid to die. Yeah. I'm just afraid if I die too young, the impact that would have on Carol and the kids and my siblings. And not even so much the financial impact because, I have the insurance and I've done my own planning. And so from a financial point of view, they would be okay. They would be fine. Yeah. And be able to maintain their current standard of living. But I think about Serena, who's going to be 18 in September, starting on the journey, her university journey, then hopefully med school after that.
Yeah.
Liam, who's turning 14, still, he's really now turning into a young man, and I'm starting to see that and to think, him not having his father around, that actually scares me. Yeah. It never did before. It really didn't. But that really concerns me. So I think about dying a lot more now and since the surgery.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm thinking, once they're set and self-sufficient, I think that fear would probably go away because I know that they would be taken care of.
Yeah.
Although the other fear that would creep in is, leaving Carol alone and behind in her older years.
Yeah.
From lifestyle change, I'm supposed to exercise more, and I do my best, to exercise more, but I'm very limited in what I can do.
Yeah.
I used to be Mr. Hockey and played lots of hockey and soccer and mountain biked and dragon boated and all kinds of things. And now I'm pretty much limited to going for a swim and a bicycle ride.
Oh, that's great. 'Cause you've talked about that swimming almost every time I catch you. Every couple of days, you're out swimming laps and getting
I was there this morning.
Exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, I was there this morning. Yeah. So I've definitely made that change. Diet-wise, when I had the surgery, within 12 months, I gained 20 pounds. And I was already overweight. And part of the weight gain was a result of I wasn't allowed to use my arms. I wasn't allowed to lift more than 5 pounds per arm for about 2 months. Yeah. And then for 6 months, 15 pounds per arm. And then after that, it just became very difficult to get motivated and exercise and lose the weight. So I haven't been able to lose the weight that I've gained, but, there's been a shift, and I don't know what triggered it, where I'm now a little bit more careful with what I eat. Again, I'm trying to be a little bit more active.
Yeah.
And then the one big question that I've had is, well, Jim, you had open heart surgery, but yet you're still smoking cigars.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to throw it out there because I know people have wondered and they don't like to ask. I'll usually just say to them and they're like, oh, I've been wondering about that. Yeah. And sure, the bottom line is smoking anything is bad for you.
Yeah.
So ideally, I shouldn't be smoking cigars at all. That's the only thing that I smoke.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, when I look at the risk reward side of it, with cigars, I smoke them 6 months out of the year. I'm not going to go outside and smoke a cigar in the middle of winter. That's just not enjoyable.
You're a summertime cigar smoker.
I'm a fair weather smoker. Like I was a fair weather golfer and a fair weather anything.
Yeah.
So definitely a fair weather smoker.
Yeah.
The other part of it too is you don't inhale cigars like you would, people who smoke marijuana or cigarettes. That's something you inhale and you're passing all that smoke through your body. Yeah. You still get the residual, about 10% of the smoke will make it in your system. Yeah. But you don't smoke it. And then the final thing, which, kind of helped me get to the point where I went back to smoking cigars after the surgery. Whenever I was at the hospital, and the medical team would ask, are you a smoker? I'm like, well, I smoke cigars in the summertime. Oh, that's okay. Like everyone would say, that's okay. Yeah. Cardiologist is like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that. But everyone else on the team was like, that's okay. Yeah. And then when I went through cardio rehab, and they're like, yeah, that's okay as well. So I'm like, okay, well, if they're saying it's okay, then it must be okay. But, finally what had happened during my cardio rehab, I would do it once a week for the first year during my recovery. Yeah. And part of the rehab was you'd have an educational component the first 30 minutes, and then you would do your cardio and resistance training afterwards. So, one of the sessions, they had one of their therapists there, and they said, we're not supposed to, say it's okay to smoke. Said, but, for a lot of people, sometimes they are just an occasional smoker, and it's something that after work they get home, and they were referring to cigarettes mostly, but, it's a way of them to reduce their stress, was to have that cigar with a glass of wine or whatever. Yeah. And in that instance, they're like, you really shouldn't, but stress is really the trigger of having heart attacks and strokes. So like in that situation, we would say we would be okay with that. Just don't smoke a lot of cigarettes, right? And I would find, and I think I shared this with you too, or maybe with someone else recently, I have my phone and track my heart rate and everything, or sorry, my watch tracks my heart rate. And a lot of times my heart rate is usually in the high 80s, low 90s.
Yeah.
But it'd be amazing whenever I'd sit down and have a cigar for an hour. Sometimes I would remember, I should look back at my heart rate, because my concern would be, did it elevate my heart rate?
Yeah.
And it actually did the opposite. I would see that the average during that 1 hour would be in like the high 50s, low 60s.
So it's almost like cigar smoking has become your own meditation, really, right? It's your time to truly mentally wind yourself down throughout the day, right? So,
well, again, a lot of the activities that I loved that would help me de-stress, I can't do anymore.
Yeah.
So this is one of the activities that I can still do that helps me to, again, it's my outlet. It helps me to de-stress.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to be giving major health advice, but it was something that I've been listening to. It's called a book is called You, and it's a manual about your own body. And one of the things it was actually talking about today was some of the key factors, and stress being one of the biggest ones. Yeah. And that if we even take a few minutes every day to sit down, breathe, reflect, and for yourself, as you've kind of pointed out, being able to sit back and enjoy a cigar for yourself, it helps you bring down like everything that's going on in your mind, and just reflect on the moment and enjoy it in that moment, right? So,
yeah, I mean, and for me too, my environment, I live in a place where, I have an acre of property. There's a forest in behind my home. So a lot of time, and the summer and late spring's my favorite, time of the year. Yeah. So I sit in the back deck, I fire up the cigar, I'll have my drink of choice, I'll have a little bit of music going on in the background, a little bit of blues, a little bit of, old, rock and roll, whatever it is. Yeah. And it literally, I just sit back and again, just, I'm in the moment, kind of release my thoughts, decompress. Yeah. And it's definitely been helpful. But it did take me a while to have my first cigar after my surgery. Yeah. So it was weird because I would, I definitely waited a few months to begin with. And my surgery was in May, which leads into my favorite time of the year, the summertime, where I would be doing a lot of these things, right? And there were some moments, I would say in August, I would start to wake up thinking, I think today I'm going to try having a cigar. And I would, in my mind, I'm like, I'm doing this today. And I would go downstairs and I'd get to the humidor and I'd open the humidor. And there was just this, it wasn't fear. I don't even know if it was guilt, but it was just like, no, not yet. And I wouldn't be able to do it. Yeah. And I think it took me until about mid-September where I had actually one of our employees at TvH Group, he had gone to, I believe it was Cuba, and he brought back just some small little Romeo and Julietas for me. And they're one of my favorites. Yeah. And I was at my brother's house mid-September, and I'm just like, I'm gonna do it now. Yeah. And had that first puff, and I was back to the bad habit. And I didn't die, because you take a puff, you're like, you're waiting for the heart attack or the stroke, and that didn't happen. So, and I'm still here 4 years later. Yeah.
Well, again, after 4 years, after having heart surgery, obviously you've had a lot more time to reflect on some of the biggest impacts that have. Do you have any perspective on how life has truly changed for you coming out of that surgery or major trauma?
It's difficult to kind of pinpoint how it's changed. I definitely think about things in a different way, and with the bend of like things that bothered me pre-surgery. I'll use a little pet peeve. If I had someone, a friend or whatever, that we'd always talk about getting together, and it was always me kind of initiating it and reaching out, and they never did. I would then eventually, after the third or fourth time, just think to myself, I'm just not going to call that person. I'm going to wait for them. Yeah. And a lot of times they didn't. Yeah. And that really bothered me. Yeah. And now that doesn't. I'm just like, you know what? It's just so petty, and so those little things don't bother me like they used to. Yeah. So I look back at some things that I might have done where I would think a little bit petty. Life's more important. We don't know. I definitely think about, we don't know if this is our last day or not. We really don't. Yeah. So is it live your life to the fullest as best as you can, You know, I'm still a dad. I'm a husband. I've got a couple of young kids. You know, I'm running a business. There's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
But I definitely will act on things, you know, dreams that I've had or things that I've wanted to do. I try not to wait like I used to, where before I used to be, well, there's always tomorrow or next month or next week.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now I'm just like, you know what? I don't know if there's a next week. So let's act on this a little bit sooner. Don't be irresponsible, you know, but definitely act a little bit differently on those.
Anything big coming out? Because obviously, like, things I learned about you over the last year or so, like, you have a motorcycle, right?
Yeah.
Something I've always wanted to do. So again, do I wait? Again, be responsible, that balancing act. But is there anything on the horizon that you see yourself doing over the next little bit?
So it was completely unexpected.
Yeah.
But my brother and my sister with their spouses and kids for my birthday are going to make my dream come true. And what they did was they got me a session. So I live near Mossport Racetrack. It's about 5 minutes from my house.
Okay.
They got me a session, 4 laps, where I'll be able to drive either a Lamborghini or a Ferrari.
Okay.
Now, growing up, those are like 2 of my most favorite cars out there.
You're Italian, of course they are.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I've never sat in one, either Ferrari or Lamborghini. I mean, I've looked at them, I've drooled over them.
You've gone to so many car shows too. I would have expected you to have sat.
Yeah, and I've been offered. I mean, I've had other friends who, you know, one has a body shop, and he does high-end vehicles, and he's had Ferraris and Lamborghinis. He's like, hey, you want to sit in it? But my thing was, I can't drive it. I don't want to sit in it.
Yeah.
So I never did. But this will be my first opportunity, 50 years in the making, of driving either a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. The biggest challenge for me is which one, right? I only get to pick one.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
And I was talking about it with Liam yesterday at dinner, actually. And he's like, so which one are you going to pick, Dad? He goes, obviously the Lamborghini. And I'm like, you know, I'm actually thinking the Ferrari. And he's like, the Ferrari? Like, it has just so much history and, you know, racing heritage.
Yeah.
And the Ferrari red is just, there's just something about that. So I'm kind of leaning towards that. But then I think back to something Frank Sinatra once said years ago, where he said, you know, if you want to become a man, you drive a Ferrari. Once you become a man, you drive a Lamborghini. So I don't know if maybe I can do the first 2 laps in a Ferrari, trying to become a man. Then once I become that man, I can then flip over to the Lamborghini. I don't know.
I guess do you have to make it a game time decision, or is it something that you'll?
I think I have to pre-book it. Yeah, there's a list of vehicles. You know, they have a McLaren, they have Porsches as well. So I think you have to pre-book it in advance. So I'm kind of, you know, in my mind trying to figure out. But I think I'm leaning towards a Ferrari. So I would say this year that's the big one.
Yeah.
And again, not in the radar for me at all. So I'm very thankful that my brother, my sister, and their spouses came up with that.
Yeah.
Because that definitely is a dream come true for me. And, you know, and then anything else in terms of, you know, personal life, I'm excited for Serena, you know, because she's now reaching another phase in her life where she's going to start university, you know, and so I'm excited about that and kind of helping her through that process. Ultimately, she wants to become a trauma surgeon, so go to med school. So that's exciting. And then Liam, you know, graduating grade 8 and starting high school. Like, those are just things in the family that I'm really looking forward to. Yeah. And I think just trying to spend more time with family and friends. Yeah. I'm more mindful of that. That's become definitely a lot more important. And it doesn't have to be, you know, we have to go out and do something somewhere. Yeah. Just come to the house, light a fire in the backyard, sit back, you know, smoke a cigar, whatever, and just be together. You know? So those are the things that are upcoming this year. Yeah. And at some point, I want to get back to doing a nice road trip and heading to the Rockies again and East Coast. I mean, I'd like to go back to the East Coast too. Yeah. You plan on doing this in a bus, an RV, in a van? How are you planning on doing your travels throughout Canada? Well, for a few years, before the surgery, Carol and I were really looking at buying a motorhome. She actually grew up traveling in a motorhome for vacations. Yeah, with Carol, unfortunately, her birth mom, she gave birth to Carol when she had an aneurysm. Her mom had an aneurysm and was in a coma, and then was wheelchair bound for the first 5 years of Carol's young life, and then unfortunately passed away. So my father-in-law is like, if I've got to travel and take my spouse and my daughter, I literally needed everything, including the kitchen sink. So he went out and actually bought a motorhome. Yeah. And Carol she says to me, she's like, those were some of the best times in her life, seeing the mountains and the ocean and the lakes and whatever. So we were planning on doing that. And then, the open heart surgery happened. So it's just like, well, that's not going to happen. And then the following year, we went to the motorhome shows and the RV shows, and we've narrowed it down to a couple, and COVID happened. And we're like, okay, well, we're not traveling with COVID. And then when that started to kind of settle down, we decided to switch from an RV to maybe getting a camper trailer. So last spring, we were this close to getting a camper trailer, and then Serena announced, yeah, guys, I think I'm doing summer school this year because I want to get a couple of credits out of the way to get me ready for grade 12 and ultimately university. So well, that's out of the picture now. And with this year, again, with a lot of the changes. So unfortunately, there's some things that they've had to be kind of, delayed, just more because of life than anything else. But I'm thinking, I think at some point when Carol and I decide to slow down again, I don't think I'm ever going to completely retire, and that's why you're in the picture as well. I don't know if you knew that, but I'm telling you that now. But I think one of the things that we might do is sell the house, and because we're not going to need the space, and buy a motorhome, and maybe get a small little bungalow or a condo, and do that. Travel and then kind of have our home base when we want to reconnect with our family. Yeah,
and obviously lots has happened over the last few years that allows this more and more to happen. And, we've talked off about me following a bunch of groups of people that travel in their RVs and pack up their families and, having their own little home office and accessibility. We talked about Starlink and how the ability to basically be connected no matter where you are in the world. And being able to see large portions, because we live in a beautiful country, and absolutely, I've been pretty much all over Canada, and I've been pretty much everywhere in the U.S. and traveling and seeing all the amazing places that there are in the world. My grandfather had an RV, so I guess it's mildly in my blood, but I should at some point resort to RVs, traveling across Ontario and Canada and the U.S. and wherever else it takes us, right? So,
well, here's the thing. You get an RV. Yeah. We'll get an RV. Yeah. And I know with Carol, we'll have to do some value village shopping. Nice. Or hopping. So we might get some really good finds. I know that's one of your favorite things to do as well. Yeah. So we could turn that into a wonderful trip.
And you can turn it into a small business. I've met many people that go value village and garage sale shopping just to find little trinkets and and resell them on eBay and whatnot. So
that's what Carol's actually planning on doing. So she's focusing right now on wallets and leather bags. Okay. And she'll come home. She's like, like this bag here, $5 at Value Village, and on eBay it's selling for like 60. Yeah. So she's thinking of doing that. Yeah. Right? And more of a hobby. I don't think she's thinking it's a big business for her. Yeah. But I think it's the find. Yeah. And I'm sure that's what you enjoy about it as well, is just finding that treasure. Yeah. So that's, you both have some similarities there for sure.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You find something you enjoy, and by being able to find it, becoming an expert in that one particular thing, kind of like our jobs too, right? You have particular is being able to, I found amazing jerseys for myself and really? Walker that you'd normally pay.
Probably Leaf jerseys because no one wants them, right?
Yeah. I usually leave those ones on the shelf.
Hey,
so
I'm saying that as a Leaf fan, all right?
Yes. So I guess that's something you're looking for. We've jokingly talked about this. You turning 50. Hopefully this is the year for the Leafs.
I made the phone call. I've submitted the request to Shanahan.
Okay.
And I'm like, listen, I turned 50. Now that will top me driving a Ferrari or Lamborghini if they win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
But it would just slightly top that. So we'll see how that goes.
Now, I've been in places. I lived in Vancouver for a while, and them making the Stanley Cup final. Wow, what an energy! Obviously, we had a taste of it when the Raptors won whatever the title is in the NBA. I don't know what it's called, but it's not as cool as the Stanley Cup. But you get a taste of what it feels.
But that was so big, though, in Toronto. Like the Raptors winning the championship. Can you imagine not if, but when Toronto does? I mean, it's bound to happen.
Yes.
It'll be crazy. Mm-hmm. So now I'm not a crowd person, so I don't think I would make my way downtown to enjoy that. I think I just maybe will get myself a more expensive cigar and enjoy that from the comfort of my own home. But that'd be awesome. And you talk about Vancouver. So I've been to the East Coast. I've been Northern Ontario because Carol's family's up there. I've been to the Yukon, the Territories, the Rockies, but I've never been to the West Coast.
Wow.
I've been in the the Valley.
Yep.
Because one year when Carol and I went on vacation to the Rockies on the Alberta side, there was a major snowstorm and we weren't able to go through the Alberta side.
Yeah.
We had to head south and cross over and go through the BC side.
Yeah.
So that was beautiful. We went through Radium Hot Springs and Golden and all that. But I haven't been to the West Coast. One of my best friends lives out there. I have a brother-in-law who lives out there. So I think that's definitely one place that I'd like to get out to for sure.
Yeah, you gotta dip your toe in both oceans, right? So because as we were talking about the kind of outdoorsy, bringing zen to your life and bringing down heart rate, stress. Part of it is like for me, it was living in BC and the ability to smell the fresh air and climb a mountain, or for some people just look at the mountains. Yeah. But I've had times in BC where I've skied, and then I've sat on the beach and enjoyed a drink on the beach all in the same day. And it is one of the best feelings. You go for a hike, you go for a ski, and you end your day off in the sunset, sitting on the beach in Vancouver. Amazing. So
see, I could do the beach thing. I'm afraid of heights, so the climbing the mountain thing. I made that mistake once back 13 years ago. So when I used to mountain bike, my buddies and I, we would have a mountain bike weekend. So we would be in Ontario and we'd go to Algonquin or Halliburton Forest, places like that, Collingwood. And then we hit our 10-year anniversary, which was in 2010. Mm-hmm. And we decided, we're going to actually go somewhere and do real mountain biking. So we took my little Jeep and my two other buddies. We loaded it all up with our bikes, and we drove to Canmore. Yeah. And, we were riding our bikes out there, and then we made the mistake of asking the young locals where to ride. And we were telling them some of the places that we did ride out there. They're like, no. And then they're drawing this map. Like, you follow this map, and this will be some epic riding. Yeah. Like, okay, fine. So we started off the next morning with my two buddies, and we're riding our bikes, about 30 minutes. I'm like, this isn't anything special. Like, it's the same thing as back home. And my one buddy, Brian, is like, I don't think we're actually at the trail yet. Yeah. And then within about 5 minutes, like, okay, I think I found the trailhead. And basically, you follow this trail, which was hard to find. And we had to carry our bikes on our backs because you were climbing up the side of the mountain. Yeah. And I think it was like a 2-kilometer hike up. It was pretty high. And then we got to the top, and the trail was basically 2-3 feet wide at most. Yeah. And on one side was the rock face, and on the other side was the drop off. Yeah. And at that moment, I realized, oh yeah, I'm afraid of heights, and I froze. Oh yeah. And Liam was just born too, so he was born in July of that year. He was a year old. So he was a year old. Serena was 5 years old, and I'm thinking, I've got a young family. If I fall over the wrong way, I'm toast. So I had to walk the whole trail holding on my bike. Well, my two other buddies are like, no, we drove all this way. We're doing it, And so God bless them, they were able to go ahead. And but for me, it was the longest trail that I was ever on my life. And I swore to God, I'm like, listen, if you get me off this trail safely, I swear I will never do this ever again. So I will go up on a gondola, no problem. Yeah. But I don't think I'll be climbing any mountains like I'm guessing you have.
Yeah. Being a dad changes you too in that, because I was, traveled, I've done skydiving, things like that. But, and I've done some, very interesting climbs and hikes and stuff like that are a little bit risky. But once Walker was born, that all changes. And again, that, part of what you were saying earlier is, the reflective of, it's not necessarily a fear, but it's the fear of leaving your family unprepared, right? So, lots to share with Walker and my experiences, and lots I want to do with him, and the same with you and your family, right?
Yeah. Well, the one thing I'd like to do that my family won't be able to do is actually go out there and do a motorcycle trip in the Rockies. Yeah, I think that would be fantastic. So that is a goal of mine. Yeah, that I'm hoping to be able to make true or come true. Yeah, not this year because again of all the graduations and stuff. Yeah, but perhaps next year.
Yeah, one of the movies that really got me interested in wanting to ride a bike is a movie called 1 Week. It's got Joshua Jackson in it, and he travels from coast to coast, and that's what made me want to ride a bike. So I don't think I was going through any midlife crisis or anything at the time. I was just, hey, that looks like something cool I would love to do. And I've traveled coast to coast. So there's a great documentary. Yeah, great documentary with Ewan McGregor in it. Sorry, I say it the way, and his buddy. I can't remember what it's called.
Charlie Borman.
That's it. So
long way round, long way up, long way down. Yeah, I'm the last one. I don't know if you watched the last one.
They did electric bikes.
Like that. Just I get the torque and all that stuff, but there's no vroom vroom sound. So I was waiting for them to get the hockey cards and put it on the back spoke. Did you ever do that?
Yes.
to kind of stimulate them. Exactly. I was waiting for that, but that never happened. So I was I was a little disappointed with the last one, but that would be epic to do something like that as well.
Well, obviously you've been through a lot. There's something, having met you and been able to get to know you as a friend and as a colleague. You've been able to share a lot, even over the last couple of years that we've been kind of working together and getting to know each other. Is there any insights that you'd love to share with anybody out there having gone through such a big traumatic experience? Something that they can kind of take away and hopefully help them or perhaps help a family member.
Yeah, I mean, some of the people that recently I came across who I knew were going into open heart surgery. The family members will say things, the person who's going to have the surgery may say things like, I'm going to die, I'm afraid, they're very negative about it. Mm-hmm. And the family members would say things like, don't think that way, you got to think differently, you got to be positive. And I think I probably, on the other side of it, as a family member, would have said those things to someone going into a major surgery like that. Yeah. But now that I'm the one who went into the surgery, I felt those feelings. Yeah. So to say to someone, don't think that way and be positive and you'll be fine, you'll get out, they're scared. Yeah. Like they literally don't know that once they put them to sleep, if they are going to wake up. That's how I felt. Yeah. And I'm a positive person. I'm not a negative person. I'm naturally an internal optimist, and it's weird. You talk about Zen, but the feeling that comes over me, I've had multiple surgeries. I've had my knees, operated on. I had my hip replaced. I had a gallbladder removed, the open heart surgery, and a lot of times I have people, say to me, are you afraid? Are you afraid going into surgery and, and not making it?
Mm-hmm.
And I can honestly say not once was I ever afraid, because, when I'm in that OR and I can hear the beeping and I can hear the activity that's happening, at that point, there's nothing you could do. You are literally trusting the professionals in that OR that they're going to do everything that they possibly can to make sure that there's a positive outcome.
Yeah.
So, and I still remember, when they pulled me out of the room and they were going to bring me down to the OR, and I was, in the hospital. I was in the bed, and I was very emotional. I couldn't control my emotions. And I remember my mom, she was there with me, and she's like, it's okay. Like, I know you're scared, and it's okay to be scared. And I looked at her and said, I'm actually not scared. I'm not afraid of the surgery. Mm-hmm. And she was, saying to me, well, you're upset. I can see you're crying. Like, obviously you must be scared. I'm like, that's not why I'm crying. And she's like, then what are you crying about? But I know the work that's coming ahead of me after I wake up from the surgery.
Yeah.
Because I've had to go through, again, when you have a hip replacement, it's very traumatic to the body. And I thought that was the hardest thing that I had to do physically. But that was nothing compared to recovering from open heart surgery, because the hip replacement was more a physical trauma. Mm-hmm. The open heart surgery is very emotional. It's physical. Yeah. There's a lot, because you're literally going to bed. I was going to bed every night for the first, I would say, 8 months after the surgery, not knowing if I was going to wake up the next morning. Like, that's the thoughts that are in your head. So I knew the recovery was going to be very, very hard, and it was. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, I was surrounded by amazing family and friends. Carol, my goodness, I mean, just I can't repay her for what she did. It's impossible. Mm-hmm. But it's funny because, when we first got married, she was the one that had major surgeries. And, some of them, she almost didn't make it through, and, long recoveries. And I remember her saying to me, I'm just returning the favor. Like, this is how you helped me get through it, and I'm returning the favor. I'm like, that was never in the plan. Like, I never thought that one day that you were going to return the favor. Yeah. But, she did. And, I was very, very blessed. So I would just say, for the person heading into it, whatever you're feeling, feel it. Yeah. And, it's great to talk to family and friends. The problem sometimes when you're talking to family and friends is they're feeling the pain, they're feeling the fear with you. Yeah. So they don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. And sometimes it just kind of fuel what you're feeling. Yeah. I would say seek out someone who's maybe not emotionally attached the same way, or someone who has experienced a similar situation. Yeah. And talk to them about how you're feeling, because they'll either sit there and say, yeah, that's exactly how I felt. That's, you're not wrong in feeling that way or thinking that way. Yeah. And to the family members, again, because I know that they feel helpless. Mm-hmm. Just listen to what they're saying. Don't try to offer a solution, because there is no solution. Just hear them out, and don't tell them that they shouldn't think a certain way and they shouldn't be, acting a certain way, because until you've been in those shoes, you really don't understand what the emotions are. Yeah. So, and the other thing that I did too, which was great for my family, and it was the hospital that actually helped me with this, was the night before my surgery, I had to sit in this meeting room and watch a video about, here's what to expect with what's going to happen with your surgery, and, pre, during, post. And one of the things that they did was they showed us a video of a person who just came out of the OR and what they looked like. Yeah. And, 7, 8 different tubes and wires sticking out of your body and all that. And so they had said, whatever family member is going to be there in the ICU, or after you get out of the operating room, warn them about how you're going to look. Yeah. And so I did. So my mom was there, Carol was there, my brother was there, and I did pre-warn them. And afterwards, Carol and my mom, they even said, thank you for doing that, because we already in our minds kind of expected what you were going to look like.
Yeah.
And it was less of a shock for us.
Yeah.
So that's something else that I would say. And then from a recovery point of view, post-surgery, everyone's going to handle it differently. Like I think I shared this, a few times before, where I don't think the magnitude of what happened is still sunk in, even 4 years later.
Yeah.
I don't know if it ever will. Some people, think about it differently. Emotionally, I'm different. I'm not who I was before. I could be watching some cheesy commercial now and I'll be bawling my eyes out.
Yeah.
And that never would have happened before.
Mm-hmm.
But we were also warned that, your mind changes a little bit, and you do become a little bit more emotional because, again, you feel things differently. You can relate to certain situations at a different level now.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll be bawling with my cigar in my hand, in my mouth.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
So it's all normal.
Yeah.
It's all normal.
Yeah. And again, the fact that we're talking about it, we're sharing it. You've been very open from the beginning, getting to know you about this, and it really speaks to the relationship that we're kind of building ourselves to, that we're open to talk about pretty much anything, which is somewhat unusual for especially males that don't get into the nitty gritty of some of the stuff that can be traumatic and how we overcame, or how we're getting the support to overcome these things. And, you obviously have done a lot of work for yourself, preparing your family for it, preparing your family, again, in our roles financially in any way possible. It's really great that to see you come out, and that you're still, as you said, still continuing to work on it yourself. And it's a journey for everybody, right? So,
and on that note, I had a thought and I just forgot about it. So keep talking, and hopefully it'll come back to me.
Yeah. Well,
part of recovering from a traumatic surgery, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So having brain blocks of things that are going on.
Well, that, and also turning 50, the combination of the two.
Absolutely.
I keep saying to Carol, I'm like, we're like computers, and the hard drive is filling up. So there's less space in there now.
Yeah. Well, as you were saying before too, it's like dumping some of the information that isn't important anymore, that we realize we sometimes spend our lives worrying about, or just pining over, that we can just let those things go and leave room for the love and the things that are most important in our lives. I just remembered. Thank you. So talking about the situation and being open about it, again, people have different thoughts behind that. I know some people who are, going to be dealing with some major surgery, and they don't want anyone to know, and they keep it quiet. And I was the opposite. I know I'd have Carol ask me, it's like, do you want me to share this with people? Like, how private do you want it? I said, no, tell whomever, and I don't care. You can give them all the details. Yeah. I literally had, at the time, less than 24 hours from when I found out I needed the surgery to the actual surgery, to kind of put my stuff in order, before I had the surgery. So I put a video together, and I posted it on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, and I sent it out through my contact list and the email, so everyone knew what was about to happen. Yeah. And part of it was, again, so that, it wasn't this kind of hush-hush secret thing like what was happening in the gym. Yeah. I just wanted people to know. Yeah. And that also prompted some people who have listened to some of my earlier podcast episodes where I've talked about the experience, where they've actually approached me privately and have asked me about the situation, because, again, they're now dealing with something similar. So they were looking for some advice. So I'm hoping that if you're out there and you're listening to this, or you're watching it on YouTube, that if you are dealing with some form of upcoming, major surgery, or if you're recovering from it and you just want to talk to somebody about your experience, some of your fears, your concerns, reach out to me. I'm available, and definitely not a problem. I'd love to hear what the thoughts are, what the concerns are, and again, share a little bit more about my experiences too. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Thank you, Jim, for sharing this amazing journey that you've had. I'm sure there's going to be lots more to share, and hopefully we can continue to share this with clients and friends alike. What your ongoing journey is, and then how we can help support people, whether it's just being somebody to listen to, right? So, obviously, for anybody out there, I'm Ryan. This is Jim. This is the Tortoise and the Hare Financial Podcast. Be sure to subscribe, like, listen, share with people that you feel may take away something from this podcast and their experience of whatever they may be going through. So thank you, Jim, for your time.
You're welcome. And just on another note, Ryan, I guess the next update on this topic will be when I'm 100.
Yes.
So we'll just wait for that, and
I'll put it on my planner.
There you go. Sounds good. Well, Ryan, thank you very much again for interviewing, and did a wonderful job. And for anyone out there, once again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, tvhfinancial.ca, or you can email us financial@tvhgroup.ca. Thanks. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.